Okay, so it is now recording.
Okay.
And this will all be cut off the replay so that it starts right away for people. But it's recording now, and then I'm going to hit make webinar live. Takes just a couple minutes. Okay, so it's now live on the web page for anybody who refreshes or joins now.
All right, so they can hear us.
Yep.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the class. We are so excited that you're here. And why don't you hit refresh on your page so that you be sure that you have the current information that Misty's just putting up. And I think mine's coming up right now so that I can see it. So can you all see that? I would love to hear from some of you. I see that there are 39 of you here so far, and we have over 200 who've signed up. How about you just put in some names and tell us where you're from? We'd love to know what part of the country you're joining us from. Anybody yet? Come on, somebody be the first one. All right, well, I'm Shelley with Preparedness Mama, and we just have about a minute until we get started, till Misty comes in and we get started. There's Misty. She's in Utah. I'm Shelley. I live in Central Texas, and Preparedness Mama has been teaching about food storage and gardening and preparedness for 4 years. And so it's very nice. I'm really excited that Misty's come to join us and teach us more about food storage. I found that there's always something to learn. No matter how long you've been doing it, there's always another something that you can learn to improve your food storage. So I'm really excited that she's joining us today. So now we're at 8 o'clock. Everyone's here, 49 of you. We're so glad that you're here. I have known Misty for about 3 years. I think I met her through blogging, and I really admire the things she does with her website, Your Own Home Store. She has a lot of knowledge about food storage, and she does her food storage differently than me. So like I was saying, I find that interesting, and so we can always learn. And so I'm really excited that she's giving us this webinar today, that we can learn something new. And hopefully, and actually I'm certain that you're going to find something new that you've learned today from the webinar she's presenting. So I will go ahead and turn time over to Misty Marsh, who will give us her lesson today about how to quickly and accurately calculate the best food storage plan for your family.
All right. Thank you so much, Shelley. I am so thrilled to be here. Like Shelley said, we've met each other online a few years back, and I really admire Shelley. I know that her website is one of a handful that I can always 100% trust and share with my readers and my followers. She does her research, she knows her stuff, she's kind, she's not full of fear, and I just have really, really enjoyed a lot of what I've even learned from her on her website. So I'm grateful that she has invited you here today and that I get the opportunity to share this class with you. Now, most of you here probably don't know me. This is probably the first time that you've actually met me. And so I would like to take just a few minutes at the beginning of the class to kind of introduce myself, share my background, how I came to be involved in food storage and emergency preparedness, and what might qualify me to actually give this class today. So I'm going to switch over to some slides. Now, that will be the majority of the presentation, will be via these slides, through these slides. But at the end of the presentation, I'll shut the slides down so you can see Shelley and I again, and we can go ahead and answer your questions. Now, if you look down below the video, you'll see a chat box. Go ahead and type your questions in there, and Shelley will answer them as we're going along. If they're questions specific for me, though, I will answer those at the end of the class. I can't see the chat while I'm actually have the slides up and I'm presenting, so I will get to those all at the very end of class. But I won't leave you hanging. I won't leave any questions unanswered. So please do type those in as we're going along. Now, if you have any sort of a technical glitch, you can type that in there as well. If it's something that Shelley can't help you with, then she has my phone number and she'll text me so that I can pull out and stop. So don't worry about that either. All right, I'm gonna switch over to my slides now. right, there we go. All right, so I grew up being taught by my parents and by my church that food storage was important. We drank powdered milk and we had buckets of wheat in the basement. My mom even gave me a basic 3-month food storage supply as a wedding gift. But to be honest, I didn't really believe in food storage as a young adult. I felt no real urgency to build a solid food storage or to learn how to use what little food storage I actually had. Even when I initially got pregnant with twin boys in 2007, I didn't think much about food storage. I was far more worried about diapers and car seats and boppy pillows. But then a few weeks before the twins were born, my husband and I moved from Utah to California. And we left behind friends and family and good paying jobs to do so. My husband was starting law school. We found a little apartment and we got settled in, but I was really unsettled internally. I wasn't sure we'd be able to care for ourselves and these twin boys if life threw us a curveball. So every day I sat in this small apartment in this huge city with 2 gorgeous babies, but no local support system and no income. My husband was gone 16 or more hours a day at school, and I realized that we needed to be better prepared. So I started Googling emergency preparedness, and honestly, I found a lot of info. It was overwhelming. Some of it was helpful, but to be honest, much of it was fear-filled, and all of it was kind of this hodgepodge of disconnected and sometimes conflicting advice. There was no real step-by-step system telling me what I needed to do first, and then next, and then last. And a lot of the information was over my head, or it didn't apply specifically to my family and our needs. I was afraid of all the different scenarios I was reading about online, but I felt really helpless because I couldn't really figure out how to get prepared for those things. And studying up on emergency preparedness in this way was pretty much squashing my optimism and making it really difficult for me to enjoy my everyday life. I wanted simple, down-to-earth information that fit me, just a normal mom who wanted to do the best to be ready to care for her kids. And not being able to find that type of information made me feel really panicky and vulnerable. So I did what I often do when I feel helpless. I turned to God in prayer. And he helped me realize 2 things. First, he wants me to enjoy my life, my kids, my husband, the beach, the mountains, the rain. Life is to be enjoyed. And second, he loves me similarly, although more perfectly, to how I love my own children. He expects my best, and he's not going to save me from every tough situation, but he will help me learn from those situations and develop character when times are tough. As I realized those 2 things, I was able to let go of my fear and my obsession. I realized that all I really needed to do was my best. And at that time, my best really wasn't much because we had no income and I was busy with twin baby boys. But even if the bad things that I feared happened, I believed God would make them meaningful in my life in some way. He'd use them to school me. And so they became a little bit less scary. But this didn't get me off the hook when it came to working on emergency preparedness. Just like I expect my children to work hard and do their best because it's good for them to not always rely on me, God expects the same from me. And while my best wasn't much at first, I did do what I could. And doing that allowed me to let go of that fear and that doomsday pessimism and to start enjoying my life again. So I started spending more reasonable amounts of time experimenting with different methods or suggestions or ideas that I would find online. I'd research and then I'd practice and experiment. And over time, I was able to decide what worked best for our family. And I started sharing what I was learning with others through my website. And as that website grew, it also brought the opportunity to test a lot of different preparedness products and food storage brands for free. These companies would want me to test their products, and I was able to do that and to fairly compare them without having to invest financially in each one individually. I also found as my website grew that there were many others looking for this type of step-by-step simplicity. Many others who wanted to get better prepared, but they didn't want to be obsessed with it or have it overtake their lives. A lot of others who felt panicky and overwhelmed and stuck. And happily, since 2009, I have been blessed to help thousands of these people become better prepared while enjoying their everyday life. Now, you should know that I am not an over-the-top doomsday prepper. I don't have a bunker anywhere. Food storage and emergency preparedness are important to me, but not any more so than dancing with my kids or going on a date with my husband. God and my family are my priorities, and I prepare because I believe God wants me to, and because I love my family and I want to be able to take care of them. So if you feel like I did back in 2007, then the information in today's class is for you. Or if you want to build a food storage, but when you try to sit down and plan it out, your head just spins, then today's class is for you. Or if one of your New Year's resolutions is to work on food storage, but you get on Google or on Pinterest and you just feel overwhelmed and confused, then the information tonight should help you. Or if you want to be able to confidently care for your family when things don't go as planned, but you don't know where to start, then today's class is for you. My goal today is to help you decide which method you'll use to calculate out a food storage for your family, and then to give you the tools to make calculating that food storage simple and quick. So we will cover 4 different methods of building a food storage for your family. The first is the just add water meals method. I am telling you, I am really fancy with these titles. Yeah, the basic calorie method, the calorie plus method, and the recipe method. So there you go, my super fancy titles for these categories, but they're clear, right? Okay, there are pros and cons to each method, and we'll discuss those so that you can decide which one is best for your family right now. I'll also show you how to calculate what your family's needs are based on the method that you choose, so you don't waste hours of time trying to figure it out on your own. And last, I'll teach you how to make your chosen method work for you, because I don't want you to waste money on food storage that you aren't going to use. But make sure that you stay till the end, because it's at the end of class that I'll be giving you all access to a printable summary sheet so you can remember what you've learned, food storage conversion charts, as well as 3 different food storage calculators. Now, these calculators typically cost $10 or $30 total on my website when they're even available. They're not always available, but I'll be giving them away for free at the end of today's presentation. Plus, you'll have an opportunity to ask any questions you might have about food storage. Now, if you're just joining us, remember that Shelle can answer some of those questions as we're going through the presentation, but I can't see them. But I will get to all those questions at the very end of today's class. I won't leave any of them unanswered. Now, know that I will cover as much as I can today, but I can't give you everything I've learned in the last 10 years about food storage or emergency preparedness in just an hour. So at the end of the class today, I will give you an opportunity to learn more and to continue to work with me if you're interested in that. All right, then let's jump right in. Giving thought to the method you'll use to calculate your family's food storage is important. Over the last 9 or 10 years, I've seen a lot of people begin stocking food without planning anything out first. I was one of those people when I first started, and to be honest, it just is not the smartest way to go about things. Yes, storing any food is better than storing no food, but starting without a plan at all creates a lot of inefficiency, which results in wasted time and wasted money. And I do not want you to waste either of those things. So as I walk you through your choices today, give some serious thought to what will work best for your family, and realize that that may be different from what works best for my family or for Shelle's family. And that's okay. Like Shelle mentioned, we do our food storage different, and that's absolutely okay. Hopefully, the 4 methods will give you some perspective and help you figure out what works best for you. Excuse me for just a minute, I need a drink. All right, one choice for building your food storage is to use pre-made just add water meals. These are pouches of food that have a number of different ingredients in them to make a meal. One example would be hot cereal, and the pouch would include oats, freeze-dried fruit, nuts, and a bit of sugar. Another pouch might have noodles, tomato powder, mushroom seasonings, and maybe some freeze-dried sausage that you'd use to make spaghetti. In order to eat them, you simply add hot water and let them sit, and then you're good to go. Now, at first glance, Just Add Water meals are very appealing to many people for two main reasons. First, they make planning what you need to store really easy. You simply buy a bucket full of the number of meals you want, and bam, you're done. You don't even need a fancy calculator. Second, they're very easy to use. There's no need to learn to cook with your food storage when all you've got to do is add some water. But in addition, there's one other reason I personally store a few of these. In a disaster situation, I may not be able to find 8 different ingredients, pots and pans and dishes right away. So for this reason, I keep a few Just Add Water meals upstairs in my regular pantry and in my car. The convenience would be very valuable for the first few days following a disaster. However, I found that many people don't know about some of the downsides to Just Add Water meals. So I have 5 that I'd like you to consider. First, they don't taste great. I've tasted Just Add Water meals from multiple different brands, and I've never found one that's just blown me away and tasted amazing. Since all of the ingredients are in one bag, everything has to be cooked for the same amount of time, which means you're going to have to choose between soggy noodles or crunchy beans and meats. Plus, all the flavors just kind of mesh together. Second, they're difficult to rotate. A lot of this is due to the not so great taste. It's unlikely your family's going to want to eat these meals instead of your regular dinners that you make with fresh ingredients. So they might just sit on your shelf and not get used unless you're forced to use them. And if you're never forced to use them, you might end up tossing out thousands of dollars of food, which is really sad. Third, they don't offer great nutrition. So there's a few reasons for this. First, when you mix ingredients like that in a bag and you want them to have a long shelf life, you have to add preservatives. So Just Add Water meals are typically going to include large amounts of salt, MSG, sugar, or other damaging additives. And if they don't include those things, then they're going to have a shorter shelf life. Be very wary of a company that says they have no additives and a 25 or 30-year shelf life. Now, eating those type of additives for a few days, that's not going to permanently damage anyone's health, no big deal. But eating them for months, if you use this for your long-term food storage, could be detrimental to your health. In addition to the additives and preservatives, many Just Add Water meals are really heavy on the white grains like rice and pasta, and they'll have very little veggies or protein. So these refined grains are full of calories, right? But not much else. They're not going to sustain energy long-term. Fourth, Just Add Water meals aren't really going to help your mood in an emergency situation. What you eat affects your mood. One of my favorite quotes about food in general is from Virginia Woolf, who said this: "One cannot think well, love well, or sleep well if one has not dined well." I can't think of a time when it will be more important to think, love, and sleep well than following a natural disaster or during a period of financial insecurity. So both the inferior taste and the inferior nutrition are going to contribute to this problem with mood, maybe. And last, they cost a lot. At first glance, they actually seem to be a relatively inexpensive option, but this can be deceiving. One example is a bucket might claim to have, say, 30 meals in it for a family of 5. But when you actually look at the calories or serving size, each person is actually getting less, and sometimes far less than 1,000 calories per day. I've seen some of these that are even around 400 to 600 calories per day. And since you can't reasonably survive, at least not well, on so few calories for weeks or months, you might need to buy 2 buckets or 3 buckets to get enough, and that's going to double or triple your cost. In addition, some companies will claim 2,000 calories per day, and that might be true. But when you look at the details, a large portion of those calories is coming from sugar-filled drinks and not from food. So you might get 1,200 calories from food and then the rest from sugar. In addition, if you choose to supplement those refined grains that we talked about with additional fruit, veggies, or protein, that's also going to increase your cost. So I have found that when I calculate cost per calories for actual food, Just Add Water meals are almost always the most expensive option. So in summary, Just Add Water meals are a good option if you're paralyzed by the effort and time required by the other 3 options that we'll discuss today. If you do choose to store a long-term supply of Just Add Water meals, here are some tips to make it work for you. First, taste a lot of different options before you fully invest in any so that you can find one that your family will eat. Second, set a schedule to eat one of your Just Add Water meals every month or so that you're rotating through them. And don't waste them. Third, try to find options with less additives and preservatives in them, but realize that if you do, and there are companies out there, that you're going to have a shorter shelf life, so make sure you're rotating through them. Fourth, look for options that include a good balance of all the food groups, or purchase additional produce and protein to have on the side. And last, be careful of the cost. Make sure you're comparing cost per calorie. All right, the next method for building a food storage is what I call the basic calorie method. And this is what many people initially think of when they think of food storage. This method includes basic life-sustaining foods such as whole grains, beans, oil, sugars, baking supplies, powdered milk, those types of things. When you use this method to plan your food storage, you calculate what you need based on the number of calories you want to eat each day. There are some calculators out there that use pounds to calculate needs, but personally, I don't think that's very accurate. Many people wonder how many calories per day they should store. This is actually the top question that people submitted before the class. And it's a great question, but not one that I dare answer directly because I'm not you. I don't know your habits, how many people are in your family, anything about you. But I can guide you in making a decision. So consider these three questions. First, how many calories per day do you eat right now? If you don't know, guesstimate. Second, how much exercise or other physically exerting tasks do you do each day or each week right now? Third, if the disaster most likely to happen in your area were to happen, would you need to have more or less energy than you do right now? Most people choose to, or not most, many people, some people will choose to store a very minimal amount of calories. Well, it's just for an emergency, right? But in my opinion, this just isn't wise. It's very likely that you're going to need more, not less energy in a disaster situation, even if it's just because you're stressed. So I suggest you store at least the number of calories you currently consume, if not more. And to give you a general number, most adults, including teenagers, are somewhere between 1,800 to 2,500 calories, and most children are somewhere between 1,200 to 1,800. So that gives you a range, but you're going to need to decide what's right for your family based on these questions and what you feel is best. All right, there are three main benefits to using the basic calorie method to plan and then build your family's food storage. First, it is extremely cost effective, and that is a huge benefit, right? These foods are the least expensive calories you can get. This is how I started back when we had very little money, but I wanted to do something. Second, it's pretty easy to plan. While it's not quite as simple as grabbing a bucket of Just Add Water meals, it's not going to take you days or even hours. The calculator I'll be giving you at the end of class today is going to do all the math for you, and in just a matter of minutes, you're going to have a shopping list ready with what you need to purchase. Last, this method offers quick peace of mind, and for me, this is honestly the best benefit. Most families can afford both the time and the money to get at least a 2 to 4 week supply of basic foods in their home. And that can bring valuable peace of mind, which allows for a quick win so that you're motivated to go on to the next step and to continue to move forward, whether that's with water storage or evacuation or whatever the next step is for you. Some of the other methods that we're going to discuss today require more time or more money. But with the basic calorie method, that peace of mind can be found really quickly. There are a few things that I want you to consider, though, when thinking about the basic calorie method. First, there is a learning curve to cooking with these foods. Now, most people don't regularly use things like wheat and powdered milk in their everyday cooking. And some people don't bake or cook much from scratch at all, so they might not use things like sugar and baking soda. Now, that may not be you. You might not fit into that category. You may use those things regularly. But if you do fit into that category, there's going to be a learning curve as you begin to use these basic foods. Now, some of you might think, like I did 10 years ago, oh, well, I'll just put them in the storage and I'll learn to use them eventually. I highly suggest you don't do that. If you store these type of foods but don't learn how to use them, you're going to increase your stress level during an emergency when stress is already really high. Here's just one example. If you have to learn how to use wheat when the internet's down and you didn't realize you needed a wheat grinder to turn it into flour, what are you going to do? Learning to use it now is important. Second, basic food can be difficult to rotate. Again, this is only true if you fit into the category of those who don't cook from scratch and don't want to. But even if you're disciplined enough to learn how to use them, if you don't have or make the time to do that regularly, they're just going to sit on your shelf and not be used unless you're forced to use them. And again, that's a waste of money. Third, eating only basic foods can cause food fatigue. Like I mentioned a little earlier, what you eat affects your mood. Now, when cooked by someone who knows how to use them, most basic foods can honestly be quite tasty, so that's not the problem. But the lack of variety is what might cause food fatigue. These basic foods can become somewhat boring and affect your mood and be difficult psychologically. And again, you're going to want to be at the top of your game during an emergency or job loss. So this is something to think about if you're only storing basic foods. Fourth, basic foods can cause digestive issues. Again, this is only true if you're not eating them regularly. While foods in this category are healthy, there's nothing that's really unhealthy. But if you're not used to eating whole grains and beans and then you start doing so suddenly because you're forced to, you're going to get sick with digestive issues. And that can sap your energy just when you need it, increase your stress during a problematic time. And in a true emergency situation without access to quality medical care, those issues can be especially dangerous, particularly if you care for young children or the elderly. But again, if you learn to use these foods and then do so regularly in your everyday cooking, it won't be an issue for your family. Fifth, basic foods are missing certain nutrients. Again, while none of the foods found in a basic food storage plan are unhealthy, they do lack the nutrients that are found in fruits and vegetables. And you can get some of those nutrients by sprouting your grains and beans, but that's one more thing to learn. And you're not going to get all of the nutrients. And last, it's difficult to create full meals with just basic foods. This method simply calls for storing enough basic calories to sustain life, but that doesn't automatically mean you're going to be able to make full meals out of the calories you have stored. You can rotate through the ingredients you store by making bread or serving a side of beans, but it can be difficult to create a full meal from just basic ingredients. So in summary, the basic calorie method is a good option for those who are on a tight budget, who like or are willing to learn to cook from scratch. So if you choose to go with this method, learn to use the foods you store if you don't already know how. Make certain that you have a grain mill so you can turn your grains into flour. Cook from scratch at least weekly to rotate through your food storage and make sure your digestive systems are used to whole grains and beans. Store your family's favorite spices and herbs in addition to what's recommended in the calculator you'll get later to help avoid that food fatigue. Learn to sprout grains and beans to help get those extra nutrients. And then consider gardening or storing fruits and vegetables at some point in the future as your finances allow. One more drink here. It won't be the last. All right, what I call the calorie plus method is very similar to the basic calorie method, but it's more robust. This method still uses whole grains, beans, powdered milk, and baking supplies as its base, but it also includes fruits, vegetables, condiments, meats, and even cheese if you want it to. What you need to store is still based on calories, and there are 4 main benefits to the calorie plus method. First, it's still pretty easy to plan. You're still planning food storage based on calories, so while there's going to be more items to choose from in your calculator, the calculator is still going to do all the math for you. It's a simple process and it's not going to take a huge amount of effort. The food you store will be well balanced and nutritious. With the calorie plus method, you're focused on balanced calories, not just calories. So you'll store food from all the food groups, which means your food storage is better balanced and more nutritious overall. You're not going to experience food fatigue because of the wide variety of foods in your food storage. Creating meals is also easier. Now, it's not quite as easy as the recipe method, which we're going to talk about next, but creating meals from food storage built using the calorie plus method is far easier than just the calorie method, simply for the fact that you have things from all the food groups. However, there still are some drawbacks to this method that you should consider, and here are 4. First, there's still that learning curve we talked about. Since the calorie plus method still uses all the things in the basic calorie method, you're going to have similar concerns with that learning curve if you don't know how to use those foods. Second, rotation can still be difficult. Now, even though some of the foods stored with this method are more familiar, I found that sometimes people still don't store things they use regularly. For example, I don't like canned green beans or really most any canned fruit or vegetable. Some people do, and that's fine, but I don't. When I started adding produce to my food storage, that was the only way I knew how to get shelf-stable produce, so I stored canned green beans. But sadly, we rarely ate it, and we wasted a lot of them. You might have the same problem. In addition, this method still requires more from scratch cooking, and if you don't make the time to do that, then once again, your food storage might just sit on your shelf until you're forced to use it, and you could waste money. Third, you might still experience digestive issues for the same reasons that we talked about with the basic calorie method. You need to be used to eating those items. But again, this can be solved by regularly using the food you store. And last, it can still be difficult to create full meals. Now, you might be wondering, well, she just listed that as a pro, and I did. I want to emphasize that if you choose to store food based on calories, that doing so using the calorie plus method is going to make creating meals far easier than doing so with just the basic calorie method, because you have things from all food groups, and that's why I've listed it as a pro. But anytime you store food based on calories, you may still end up with some awkward meals. And this is because even if you have a balanced number of calories from each food group, you may have too much or not enough of one specific ingredient. For example, you may end up with a lot of extra spaghetti noodles and not enough tomato sauce to make your spaghetti. So in summary, the calorie plus method is a good option for those who want a well-balanced food storage, don't need the least expensive option, and aren't ready to spend the time required for the last method that we'll discuss today. If you choose to go with this method, once again, please learn to use the foods that you have stored if you don't already know how. Make certain you have a grain mill so you can turn your grains into flour, and then cook from scratch regularly to rotate through your food storage and to make sure your digestive systems are used to whole grains and beans. Okay, the last method that we're going to discuss today is what I call the recipe method. And the idea behind this method is that the food you store should be based on recipes. So in other words, you should store the ingredients you need to make certain recipes instead of just basing your food storage on total calories. So you're going to get more specific and organized. And the first step is to gather recipes that your family already likes to eat. Then you convert those recipes to use shelf-stable ingredients. Then you calculate how much of each ingredient you should store. And the calculator I'll give you later today will help you do that. Now, converting recipes to shelf-stable ingredients isn't possible with 100% of recipes. For example, you might like to eat steak. I do. But unfortunately, there is no full steak available in a shelf-stable format. But with the amazing shelf-stable foods that are available today, it can happen for most of your recipes. I'd say around 60 to 70% of recipes can be converted to shelf-stable ingredients. And I'll provide you with some food storage conversion charts at the end of today's class that will help you do that. You can pull out your recipe for fajitas and figure out, that I need X amount of freeze-dried bell peppers and onions in order to make my family's fajitas. Now, there are 5 main benefits to using the recipe method to plan and build your food storage. First, your food's going to be easy to use. When and if you have to switch to using your food storage, this method is going to be the easiest to switch to because you're just making recipes your family already likes. Second, your food storage is going to be well balanced and nutritious. Now, that obviously depends on how well balanced and nutritious your recipes currently are. But at the very least, basing your food storage on recipes you're already eating means your food storage will have the same level of nutrition that your current diet does. Now, I often get questions about allergies, and so I'll just kind of throw this in there. But basing your food storage on recipes you're already eating solves the allergy problem. A lot of people will ask me, well, I can't store wheat because I'm gluten-free. Can't store powdered milk because I can't have dairy. So what do I store? Well, store what you're eating. What did you have for dinner last night? Store those ingredients in shelf-stable format. It can kind of help solve that allergy problem. All right, number 3, you're not going to experience food fatigue because you get to decide how much variety to include, and no matter what you choose, they're recipes that your family already likes and enjoys. 4th, rotation is easier, which means you're going to waste less food. Think about it. By storing ingredients for recipes your family already uses, you make rotation far easier. Instead of running to the store when you run out of bell peppers, you run to your food storage and you rotate through it. You're not trying to feed your family foods that they aren't used to. You're not trying to learn to cook with anything new. You're feeding them things that they already enjoy. So you're naturally going to rotate that through that food without much effort. And last, I'm going to talk about a few extra benefits. But before I get into that, I want to make it clear that these extra benefits, some of them they're all really available no matter what food you choose to store, right? And some of you may already cook with things like wheat and beans and powdered milk. Those might be the things you're using in your recipes. So this isn't exclusive to, it's not, excuse me, I just lost my train of thought there. It doesn't exclude any of the other methods. However, I believe it to be particularly true of the recipe method. If you're storing foods that you already use, then you get some extra benefits. If it's going to decrease the time you spend planning meals, making grocery lists, and shopping at the grocery store. I could go weeks without meal planning because I have so many full recipes in my food storage. Or what about a week where you're sick or overly busy and you just cannot find the time to get to the grocery store? Well, pull out your food storage and avoid the cost and poor nutrition of fast food by feeding your family a meal they already like. Or what about a week where there's a really bad snowstorm? The power's still on and you could go do your grocery shopping, but you'd really rather stay home? Well, pull out your food storage, eat a meal you like, and keep yourself warm and safe. Or what about a night where you find out a friend or neighbor just experienced a loss or personal tragedy, but it's just hours before dinner and you don't have time to go grocery shopping? Pull out your food storage and whip up a quick meal to show you care. Again, while having any food storage can help with these things, if it's food that you regularly use anyway, it's going to make those benefits even better and allow you to benefit from your food storage even if you're never forced to use it. But there are some downsides to the recipe method, and honestly, both of them can be pretty hard to overcome. First, it's very time-consuming to plan. You've got to gather recipes, convert them to shelf-stable format, and then calculate out the ingredients you need. Now, the calculator I'll give you will make that calculation part far simpler, but it's still time-consuming, and to be honest, it can be just plain hard. Second, cost can be higher. Now, this isn't true if you're already cooking with things like wheat and beans, those inexpensive calories. But if you're not, this might not be real whole grain and bean heavy if that's not what you regularly eat. So quality shelf-stable fruits, vegetables, meats, and cheeses, they're more expensive per calorie than the basics are. Oh, but one thing I will throw out there is I have started using freeze-dried foods, honestly, vegetables, fruits, meats, cheeses that are freeze-dried. I thought that my cost would go up. I had some sticker shock as I looked at the prices of some of those foods, and I was a little worried about that. But actually, our food budget has stayed about the same, and I attribute that to the fact that there is no waste. So instead of buying fresh celery and throwing 2/3 of it away because I didn't need that much for one recipe, I just scoop out, a 1/3 cup of celery, dump it in my soup or my casserole, and put the rest back on the shelf where it doesn't go bad. So the cost, although there is some sticker shock there, isn't necessarily as high as it might seem at first. So in summary, the recipe method is a good option for those who want a highly customized, easy to use food storage that they know their family will enjoy eating and are willing to invest the time in planning that food storage and the money into building it. So if you choose to go with the recipe method, commit to investing a significant amount of time. Set aside a week or so to work through it. Pick your recipes, maybe 3 to 5 breakfast and lunch recipes and 7 to 14 dinner recipes. Convert those recipes to shelf-stable ingredients using the conversion charts I'll give you, and then try making them at least once. I suggest that so you make sure they turn out okay. Then use the calculator I'll provide you with to calculate your totals. Now, if you really want to go with the recipe method, remember that you don't have to do 3 months or 6 months or 12 months. You could even just go 1 month at a time. if you need to for financial reasons. Now, I'd like to share with you what I've done as I've built a food storage for our family. However, I don't want you to just do what I did, because what I've done might not be right for your family. The reason I'm sharing this is because I get that seeing how someone else has put this into action can be a helpful starting point, even if you don't choose to do things the exact same way. When I first started with food storage, we were very poor law school students, as I mentioned earlier, and we just didn't have any extra money. So for this reason, and the fact that I didn't know much about all the options out there for food storage, I started with the basic calorie plan. I purchased enough calories of wheat, rice, beans, powdered milk, macaroni, some dehydrated apples, onions, oats, and sugar to last my husband and I for a month, and our twins were still breastfeeding at this point. In addition, I bought a very inexpensive hand-grained meal, and I learned how to make homemade bread. Now, storing that food and learning the little I did brought incredible, priceless peace of mind. I loved knowing that we had something, anything stored away. I knew that it would keep us alive if it needed to. But to be honest, man, alive am I glad I never had to use that food storage exclusively. It would have been so overwhelming. I have no idea what kind of meals I would have made. Over time, I kind of switched to the Calorie Plus plan. I didn't actually calculate out the calories, but I did slowly add more fruits, vegetables, and meat to our storage. I didn't have the space for a garden, and I didn't have the money to invest in canning equipment or, quite honestly, the energy to learn either of those things. I had 3 children under age 2 at that time. So I bought grocery store cans, and I honestly didn't love the texture or how they worked in my recipes, but I didn't really realize that there were other options. But having those cans still increased my peace of mind. It wasn't food that we didn't know how to use or didn't like. And I convinced myself that I'd get around to eating it and we'd have it for dinner more often. But unfortunately, we didn't do that often enough. And I wasted a lot of food because we didn't rotate through it. Eventually, I learned about and tasted freeze-dried foods. I was amazed at how close to fresh they tasted in my family's recipes. And we were doing better financially at this point. I realized that with freeze-dried food, I could base my food storage off recipes my family already knew and loved. My initial goal was to immediately create a full plan based on recipes, but I was a little overzealous. I didn't have the calculator that I'm going to give you today, and it ended up being harder than I thought. So I started by simply adding food I knew I used regularly in recipes. So this is kind of maybe an in-between the Calorie Plus and the recipe plan. For 2 years, I just kept randomly adding things like freeze-dried chicken, green beans, corn, strawberries, potatoes, cheese, and more. And as my storage grew, I loved knowing there were many recipes I could make with my food storage, but I still wasn't sure how much of each ingredient I needed for a 3-month or 6-month or 12-month supply of those recipes. It wasn't until 2014 that I actually sat down and calculated that out, and I started by choosing recipes we loved. Then I tested each recipe by making it 2 to 3 times with shelf-stable ingredients. Now, I know I recommend you make it once, but I did it 2 to 3 times because I was putting together a recipe book, and I wanted to make sure that I got things just right. Once I had every recipe converted, I created a calculator so I could figure out exactly how much of each ingredient I needed. That's the calculator you'll get today. Now, as I thought about the process I went through, I want to offer a few encouraging thoughts. First, some food is better than no food. Don't let the fear of choosing the wrong method keep you from storing food for your family. Make the best decision you can with the information you have, but make a decision and then act. Store something. The peace of mind is priceless. Second, it's okay to start simple, even if that's not where you want to end up. It's okay to start with the basic calorie method. It's even okay to stay with the basic calorie method. Or if you really want to start with the recipe method, maybe pick just a few simple recipes. You don't have to go all out like I have these last couple of years. That's not how I started. I do suggest that you keep your long-term food storage goals in mind so you don't buy things that won't fit into that at all. But starting simple allows for immediate peace of mind and that quick win I talked about earlier. Those quick wins are what motivate you to keep moving forward with food storage and other areas of emergency preparedness. Third, mistakes are okay. I wish I had never stored so much canned grocery foods, but hey, I learned. Our family had food storage during that time, or food insurance during that time, and it ended up benefiting a local food bank. So it's okay that I made the quote unquote wrong choice for our family. It was better than not making any choice at all. Last, the method you choose will likely evolve and change over time. Maybe right now you don't have time to learn to use basic foods, but in 5 years, when all your kids are in school, you will. Or maybe right now you're living on student loans and you don't have any extra income for freeze-dried foods, but in 10 years, when you're well into your career, you will be able to afford them. Your tastes will also likely change over time, which means you might change the recipes you store food for. So be open to that and keep it in mind as you choose which method you'll move forward with for now. So remember my story and those 4 encouraging tips. Remember that you can plan and build a good food storage for your family. You can gain peace of mind and become more self-reliant. I have done this presentation 7 times, and every time I see that peach of mind and I think, I'm going to go back and fix that, and then I forget. Yes, it says gain peace of mind, but I actually mean gain peace of mind and self-reliance. All right, so as a review, just add water meals are a good option if you're paralyzed by the effort and the time required by the other 3 options. The basic calorie is a good method for those on a tight budget who like to cook from scratch. The Calorie Plus method is a good option for those who want a well-balanced food storage, but don't want to spend the time required for the recipe method. And last, the recipe method is a good option for those who want a customized, easy-to-use food storage and are willing to invest the time. Now, many people have emailed and asked me about inventory systems. I already have food storage. How do I keep track of it? Or I don't want to buy food storage because I'm afraid I won't be able to keep on top of it and rotate through it. Great questions. There are 2 inventory systems I recommend. First is the Preparedness Planner, and this was written by a friend of mine. Her name is Jennifer. She's also a friend of Shelle's. And when I found her planner, she wasn't a friend. I didn't know her, but she has since become a friend, and her planner is incredibly comprehensive and helpful. And she is also willing to reach out and answer any questions that you have as you use it. So if you like the paper option, that's the one I suggest. The second option is a smartphone app called Prep and Pantry. Now, I love this app because it allows you to put food in different areas of your home. So if you have a small home and you have to store some food, under Jimmy's bed and other food in Jane's closet, you can put those areas in this app so you always know what you have everywhere. In addition, you scan food as you put it into your storage areas. You scan it out as you move it into your main pantry. So when you're at the grocery store, you can see exactly, how much rice you need if you find rice on sale. Now, one problem here that I've found since I started these classes over the last few weeks is the original developer, creator of this app sold it a year ago. Now, I no longer use this app because my food storage is completely full, and I'm not needing to keep track of it quite as much as I used to. So I didn't realize that the app, the support isn't quite as great as it used to be. So I am on the hunt for a new one, but I did reach out to the new owner, and they said that they are making a change to the app in the next month or so that it should be a lot better and the support system should be back to where it was before. So just so you have that information there. All right. There are 3 different calculators I've created to help you calculate your family's food storage needs once you've chosen a method. The first is for the basic calorie method, the second for the Calorie Plus, and the third for the recipe method. Now, each calculator can be adjusted in various ways to fit your family's current needs. So you might use one calculator now and a different one in a few years, or you might start with a 1-month supply and then eventually work up to a 12-month supply. I typically charge $10 for each calculator on my website, but as a thank you for attending this class tonight, I would like to give all of them to you for free. Now, below the chat, you're going to see a button that says Food Storage Class Free Resources. If you click on that button now, you're not going to be able to access the resources yet because you'll need a password, and I'll give that to you in just a few minutes. But once you have access, you'll find the 3 calculators along with the videos showing you how to use each one, a summary sheet of today's lesson, as well as multiple food storage and conversion charts. I've also included links to those 2 inventory systems I mentioned. Now, I sincerely hope that these tools help you to build a food storage for your family. I'm grateful for your time tonight. I enjoy helping people, and I believe these tools will help you. If you appreciate the value of what I've taught here today, and are ready to get your family fully ready for emergencies, I do have more for you. As I mentioned at the beginning of the class, I simply can't teach you everything I've learned in the last 10 years in an hour. But I know you took the time to show up today because you're smart and you care about your family. You want to be able to care for them even when things don't go as planned. And you don't want to rely on other people who may or may not be reliable to do that for you. Maybe you even have a New Year's resolution to get your family prepared. But I'm also guessing that you're here in this class because you haven't quite found a way to fully prepare your family yet. You aren't fully comfortable. And you're busy. You don't have time for that never-ending Googling about emergency preparedness that I tried 10 years ago. Trying to fit emergency preparedness into your life, this is how I felt 10 years ago. It felt like a round peg that I was trying to stuff into a square hole, and it just wouldn't work. I've been there, and I know how impractical it feels to wade through all the staggering information, conflicting information even, that's available out there in Google land. But happily, I'm no longer there. While there's always room for development and growth, I now feel confident that I can care for my family regardless of what life might throw at us. And so do a lot of those that I've coached over the last few years. Here's what one young mother, Stephanie, had to say after working with me. Like many people who are beginning to realize the necessity of being prepared, I was completely overwhelmed. So much so, I was practically paralyzed. Misty really helped me to break down all the different components of emergency preparedness and made it extremely easy to be focused and accomplish my goals. My family is now well on its way to being prepared for anything that may come our way. So today I've given you enough information for you to calculate a solid food storage plan for your family. And that's a start. That's a great place to start. But I'd like to do more, so I want to give you a choice today. You can choose to take the info and the tools that I've given you and run with it on your own. I have done all I can to pack this class full of helpful information and tools that I sincerely believe will help you make progress with your food storage. But if you'd like to dig a little deeper into food storage and continue to work with me and have my full support in all areas of emergency preparedness like water storage and purification, types of food storage, evacuation, first aid, power outages, and more, then I'd like to invite you to enroll in my comprehensive emergency preparedness e-course called Simply Prepared. This is a 12-step online learning system that smart families use in preparing their families for emergencies without having to deal with that tiresome research and frustrating Googling. This is the system that I was looking for 10 years ago when I was Googling. This is what I wished existed. Start with this, do this next, end with this. Each week for 12 weeks, you'll go through one pre-recorded module anytime it's convenient for you. Every module is available in video, downloadable audio, or printable formats so that you can use them wherever it's most convenient for you, during your commute, out on a run. You can go through them weekly as they're released, or you can work on just one a month or one every 3 months at your own pace. You can access them while the kids are at school or at midnight when everything's quiet. Each of the modules includes 1 to 3 lessons that are very simple, clear, and easy to implement. I walk you through the process of preparing your family for emergency in a logical step-by-step manner. At the end of the first module, which is called Module 0, you'll have the perspective and momentum you need to be successful and know where you can find the money and time to truly get prepared. The eye-opening worksheets in Module 1 will help you avoid the biggest mistake that you can make when working to prepare your family for emergencies. Those who have taken this class already say that the majority of them say this module is their favorite. You leave this module knowing exactly what you need and don't need to be prepared for. In Module 2, storage space and organization, we'll explore and talk about maybe some new perspectives for making the most out of the storage space you have, particularly if you have a small space. And you'll also learn how and where to properly store and rotate your supplies so that they don't go to waste. In Module 3, create a practical family emergency plan. You're going to create a surefire plan for your family. In addition, I will show you and teach you some methods for teaching that plan to young children without scaring or overwhelming them. In Module 4, I'll debunk some of the myths out there about how to calculate how much water your family needs. I believe there's a lot of misinformation out there in this category. I'll also help you decide what containers you should store it in. In Module 5, Emergency Water Safety, you'll learn proven ways to both find and then properly clean additional water sources. In Module 6, we'll take an in-depth look and compare the 4 food storage calculation methods we've learned about today. You've basically had one of the 24 lessons today. But in Module 6, there's actually a second lesson where we discuss the 3 types of shelf-stable food. So you can successfully choose quality food that will be useful to your family when you need it. I have chosen mostly freeze-dried food, but you may not want to choose that. So we'll discuss other options there. In Module 7, you'll unlock access to the 3 calculators I gave you today, but I'll show you how to use them in setting short and long-term goals so you can start building your food storage one step at a time and actually make progress and be successful. Now, all the food in the world isn't going to do you a whole lot of good if you don't know how to use it. So that's what we'll focus on in Module 8. I'll help you save time, money, and avoid waste and decrease your daily mealtime stress by showing you how to regularly use the food you're storing, whether those are basic foods or freeze-dried foods. In addition to food and water, there are a lot of preparedness supplies that are important in a well-rounded preparedness plan, but this is where it can start to get pretty overwhelming. So we'll discuss first aid, communication, hygiene, sanitation supplies. I'll help you see which ones are actually useful, practical, and reliable, and I'll help you see which ones you don't need to save you money. Now, power outages are one disaster that almost everyone will face at one time or another, and long-term outages can be dangerous. So in Module 10, I'll make sure you have the skills and tools to cook and stay warm if it's cold or cool if it's hot during a power outage. And finally, in Module 11, you'll create an evacuation plan that guarantees you're going to grab what's most important to your family first, even if you're panicking. Now, you'll log in to access all these lessons. But in addition to the 12 modules, when you're logged in, you will also have access to worksheets to help you more fully understand what you're learning so you can apply it to your family and situation. I don't want you to waste time or money on the wrong thing. You'll also find a challenge for each lesson to help you apply what you've learned, printable summaries, comparisons, and lists that will help you recall what you've learned so you can improve your preparation over time without having to go back and rewatch entire lessons, although you can do that if you want. And I'll give you a chart, multiple charts to summarize what you've learned and help you compare the pros and cons of the various options so you can get with your spouse or other family members and make informed decisions together. Then outside of the actual course content where you log in, you will have access to 3 additional bonuses. The first is an online community where you can collaborate with people like you trying to do the same thing as you every day. This is a great place to get support from others who are also working to get their families prepared. But in addition, I'm in this community and I will answer any question you have here within 24 business hours, often much, much quicker. You'll have 3 live Q&A calls with me where we can discuss the course content in more detail and I can help you apply it specifically to your family's needs. And you'll have access to 5 expert extras. So I have reached out to some emergency preparedness experts and asked them to go in more depth about a few certain topics, like gardening. There's an enormous, beautiful gardening video that you'll have access to. There are also 2 bonuses that you'll get at course completion. Everyone who enrolls in the course will receive a preparedness priority roadmap, which will help you continue to invest your time and money wisely even once the course modules are complete. And anyone who completes all the course worksheets by August 31st will also get $50 in free food storage. I will give you a credit to Thrive Life where you can purchase the food storage of your choice. Now, to enroll in the Simply Prepared e-course, you can choose to invest 3 payments of $97, or you can save by paying $249 in full at the time of enrollment. Now, there are many students who have already gone through this course, and I'd like to share what just 2 of them had to say today, both brief. First, Rob, who is a former U.S. Marine, as well as a current firefighter and paramedic, says this: "Preparedness has been my thing for more than 20 years. Misty has by far the most complete and well thought out preparedness course of anything I've seen. It will be the best money you spend on preparedness. And Jerica says, Misty's course covers everything in one stop. It's easy, contagious, and addictive. Her course got us all the tools and resources we needed to be prepared and cut out the extensive info search. As I followed her program, it felt like a weight was lifted. Now, I know things can be easy to procrastinate, particularly emergency preparedness, right? So I have a fast action bonus for you. The first 40 people to enroll in Simply Prepared will receive a $50 credit to Thrive Life for the food storage of your choice. This is in addition to the $50 credit you can earn by completing the course worksheets. You earn this simply by enrolling. In addition, because you have attended this webinar with Shelle tonight, and I want to say thank you to her and provide some extra value to those of you who follow her, if you enroll in the next 5 days, you will also get a copy of my 72-hour kit ebook. This is the book that kind of put my website on the map. It's a step-by-step system, walks you through building a very customized 72-hour kit for your family and gives you a lot of different budget options. Second, a copy of my food storage recipe book, which is called Your Shelf-Stable Pantry. These are the recipes I mentioned earlier that I made 2 or 3 times and hired a photographer to come in. And third, my fillable grab-and-go binder pages. And to slow down. I give these away for free on my website, but that version you have to fill out by hand. This version you can type into them and then save them to your computer, which makes it easier to change if your information needs updating. So those 3 bonuses are available to you because you're one of Shelle's followers and only if you enroll in the next 5 days. Now, I know you're busy, so you'll have lifetime access to the materials in this e-course and the community that's built for it. So this means that while the modules are released 1 week at a time, they're never taken away from you once they're released. So you can work through the course at your own pace, not paste. Plus, with downloadable content, you can work on the course material anytime, day or night, like I mentioned, in the car, relaxing in the tub, on your commute. Finally, I want you to be confident and comfortable. So there we go. I offer 100% money back guarantee. If for any reason the course doesn't meet your needs, you have 3 weeks from the start date to request a full refund from me. If you're interested and you'd like to learn more, you can click on the About Simply Prepared e-course button that's down below the chat, and you'll find all the information as well as how to enroll there. But for now, let's get to the free resources I promised all of you who stayed till the end. I truly am grateful for your time today. I'm excited to make these gifts available to you for free. Yes, my website is a business for me and it helps support my family, but I do it for 2 reasons. 1, because it supports my family, and 2, because I enjoy helping people. I'm grateful for your time and excited that you're here, and I want to make these resources available to you for free. So you can click on that Food Storage Class Free Resources button below, and it's going to ask you for a password. The password you need to enter is food storage, all one word and all caps. There is no space between food and storage. It's simply FOODSTORAGE, all caps and all one word. On that page, you'll be able to download the calculators, watch tutorial videos to help you use them. You'll also find a printable summary sheet of today's lesson and those food storage conversion charts I mentioned. In addition, there will be links to the 2 inventory systems that I mentioned. All right, let's get your questions answered. So hopefully you've been asking questions as we've gone along, but feel free to ask anything about planning a food storage or about the Simply Prepared e-course. I'm going to pull out of the slides so that you can see Shelle and I again here. And she will read off questions to me. She may answer those that she wants to answer, and we will make sure that we get through all of these questions for you. So let me stop screen sharing here. And hi. All right. So Shelle, what questions do we have?
We have a lot of people asking. I'm doubling myself. Is that better? I have a lot of people asking about which freeze-dried food you're using. And so I haven't answered them yet. They're very curious. We both use Thrive Foods. And so I thought I'd have you talk a little bit about Thrive. Let me tell you first how I use it. I divert $50 a month from my regular food storage budget to purchasing freeze-dried foods. And we use those in cooking soups, and I use them regularly. instead of buying fresh produce. You talked about that a little. So why don't you tell everybody about Thrive and how you use freeze dried?
Okay. First, I'll tell you why I use Thrive. I have bought or even been gifted many other food storage brands, and I will say that I don't think there's any brand out there that's just awful or terrible. But I have, on occasion, gotten a can from another brand, and I look at it and it looks kind of gray, or it doesn't smell bad, but it doesn't smell like strawberries or whatever. Every can I've ever gotten from Thrive looks colorful and smells like the food that's in there. In addition, they're the only food storage company that freeze dries their own food, which means they have a lot more choice of suppliers. There's just not a lot of freeze dryers out there. So most food storage companies only can pick from 2 or 3 or 4 suppliers for, say, ground beef. Whereas Thrive can choose from a lot of local suppliers and basically anyone they want, because they can then freeze dry their own food. So their quality just tends to be higher. And I do the same thing Shelle does. It's what I love about the freeze-dried food is that it is so easy to just use in my everyday recipes. She mentioned soup. I can throw together a soup in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and have dinner on the table. I don't do that all the time. There are still times where I pull out a fresh chicken breast and slice it up, but it's the closest thing you have to fresh produce and meat out there. So I use it regularly, just like Shelle does.
Yeah, and someone mentioned about making meals in a jar and using those as storage, and about Stephanie Peterson, Chef Tess's book. You probably have that book?
I don't have
and they
it,
were afraid about using it, but you should definitely get some of those meals together. And the recipes in that book are really good.
I agree.
Yeah, and Misty's recipes too.
I have just a few jar recipes that are on my website, but most of my recipes can be turned into a jar meal, and I think they're great. They're great for even, say, a babysitter. You know, even my husband or my mom, I leave the kids with, and they're not used to cooking for them every night. I say, here's a jar, add this much water, and my kids have a meal that they're used to. They're great.
We do that. I make them up ahead of time, and then if we get in a jam, I just pull them out and add water and cook them up. My family likes them. We've found recipes that they like. So Jim wanted to know if there's a way that you suggest that he can learn to teach others about food storage. What do you think?
Oh, how have I learned to teach others about food storage? I think, honestly, all it really takes is a little bit of courage and a little bit of organization. Jim, if you already know about food storage and you're interested in it and you have knowledge that you want to share, then I think it just takes a little bit of courage. You can approach, communities. Libraries will sometimes let you offer free classes. Church groups will oftentimes let you offer free classes, especially if you're not selling anything, to just go in and teach. Just sit down, get your thoughts on paper. That would be my suggestion. Do you have any suggestions there, Shelle?
I agree with all those. And you must have a friend who wants to know. Share what you know about food storage with your friend, and that'd be a great way to get started. Jay McDonald wants to know if you have some easy recipes, some recipe ideas for easy meals to make in emergency situations. Is there anything that comes to your mind? Is this like the easy meal?
Spaghetti. I mean, you can do spaghetti right even without meat. Buy spaghetti noodles and buy a jar of spaghetti sauce. Those 2 things, then you've got, can of green beans, and you've got a really quick, easy meal. I think there are a lot of things, a lot of soups can be made even if you don't want freeze-dried, they can be made with canned, taco soup. Grab a can of beans and a little bit of taco seasoning and some tomato, there are recipes, a lot of soup recipes can be made really easy with just some canned ingredients.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. Someone wants to know if there are any special considerations for using freeze-dried food, special cooking instructions, storage requirements.
A little bit. I think there's a very small learning curve with freeze-dried foods, although when you open that first can, it doesn't feel like it. It feels, oh my goodness, how do I use this food? But really, it's a lot easier than you might think, and they're very forgiving. Start with a soup. Just, put 4 cups of water in a bowl and add a little bit of green beans and a little bit, and they'll be fine. One thing is that they take a lot less water than sometimes you might think. When I first decided to hydrate raspberries, I put them in a bowl and I covered them with water, and well, they ended up a soggy mess. I've since learned to just spritz water on them, just spray water on them, and they'll rehydrate a lot better. So that's one tip. As far as special considerations, one thing I would say is similar to wheat and beans. If you're not used to eating them, freeze-dried foods, if you eat them without water, you're going to have digestive issues, right? Because if you grab a normal fresh strawberry, it has water in it. But if you eat half a can of freeze-dried strawberries, which one of my friends did when I gave it to her because they're good.
They're like candy.
Yeah. So that's one thing to think about there. As far as use goes, Shelle, you may have tips on your website as well. I have an article that's, I think it's 4 or 5 tips for using freeze-dried foods that you can find that kind of would get you started.
Yeah, I do too.
Perfect.
Sheila wants to know the best way to save produce or greens. Do you do any canning, or is that part of your food storage plan?
Very little, and it's something that I've wanted to learn for a long time, but the fact that I honestly get most of my food storage for free now from Thrive, and I just have not found the motivation to really do it. I have done some, but you are probably far more knowledgeable in that topic, Shelle. So I'll let you answer that one.
My food storage relies heavily on canning my own food and freezing my own food and dehydrating my own food, and that's how ours differs. I put a little bit of freeze-dried in mine, and I grow and produce my own. So like I said, it's fun to see how you do it, and I do it a little differently. I'm more hands-on with mine, and so I have some things on my website about how to dehydrate. And as far as greens are tough to save. You can dry them, you can dehydrate them, and you can powder them, but just saving a green leaf there's really no way to save that. It's got too much water in it. It can't be saved.
Thank you. I garden, and I love fresh produce. And I freeze a lot. We have a huge freezer, and I have a little bit of dehydrated food and a lot of preserves. I love to keep.
Yeah, preserves are good. Yeah, I agree. Yes, and so they're asking Thrive is the dry. It's Thrive Life. I'll type it in here.
Thrive Life.
Is it .com, do you think? ThriveLife.com? Do you have a link that you want to put on?
No, put your link, Shelle.
And I can't probably do that without going and looking at my website right now. You're going to send out an email to everybody? How about I'll put it in there?
Yeah, I'll put it in there. That sounds
okay. Great. So when you send out the link for the webinar, I'll put the link in for Thrive Life in there.
Perfect.
I think that's the questions.
Okay. Well, if anything else comes in, I'll watch the chat here because sometimes questions tend to trickle in a little bit after we're done. So feel free to keep adding questions there. Shelle or I will answer them through the chat. And then I will go ahead and send out a link to this replay along with that link to Thrive Life. Is there anything anyone else wants us to include in that? If there is, type it in real quick. That'll go out to you within the next hour. If you have any questions after that aren't answered, that we don't get to on the chat, feel free to go ahead and just respond directly to that email, and I'm happy to answer any of those.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you,
This
Shelle.
has been something that my readers very much were interested in, so it's been great to see the way you do it. Thank you for sharing with us.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks, you too.